Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Careers Explained, the YouTube channel designed to help young students understand what each career is all about and what it takes to be successful in those careers. My name is Alexander Lluch, and today we're going to be interviewing Joe Dzida, a transactional real estate attorney. Joe has a bachelor's degree from Loyola Marymount University and has a Juris Doctor from Loyola Law School. Joe, how are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you, Alexander?
I'm good. Real quick, can you explain real quick what a transactional real estate attorney is?
So, a lot of people, when they think attorneys, they think what's actually called a litigation attorney or a litigator. The biggest distinction with attorneys is you have litigation and you have transactional work. So, I do transactional work. Now, what that means is essentially I deal with the drafting, review, and production of contracts.
Nice.
So, as a transactional attorney in the field of real estate, most of my job consists of either purchase and sale work or leasing work.
Okay.
So my clients are companies that buy, sell, and invest in real estate. And for those clients, I would draft what we call purchase and sale documents, which are the 40, 50, 60 page long documents used in a transaction by which you would buy or sell property.
Nice.
The other half of my practice consists of leasing, and that involves clients who are landlords. So there'll be landlords of giant office buildings who rent out space to what they call tenants. And so I'll draft the lease documents for those tenants. And with respect to both those duties, most of my job consists of the negotiation back and forth of those documents between landlord and the other side, whether it's a tenant or a buyer or a seller. I act as sort of the legal go-between for my clients and the other side.
Nice. That's great. But, before all of this, you went to high school, you went to college. So I guess, how was your high school experience like? Did you know what you wanted to do when you were there, or how was that whole thing?
My high school experience was great. To be honest, I had no idea what I wanted to do in high school. I knew that the next step was undergrad. So I didn't really put too much thought into what I wanted my career to be because I knew I was still going to be in school.
Right.
So really my biggest goal out of high school was just to make it into a good university.
Right. Was there like a certain point where you realized you need to start getting ready for the real world? Because, a lot of kids in high school, they come in as freshmen and, they're like, oh, 4 years, I got time. But when did it hit you that you needed to start applying to college, figuring out what you wanted to do in college and stuff like that?
Sure. It probably hit me at the last minute, to be honest. Like you said, it's easy to get caught up in the 4, potentially 5 years of undergrad. And as much fun as it is and as easy as it is to forget about the real world, I'd say it was the middle to end of my junior year of undergrad when I had to seriously start thinking about what I wanted to do after school.
Okay.
I graduated from undergrad in 2013, so the economy had kind of rebounded but wasn't great yet, but I did know that I didn't want to go out into the job market yet.
Right.
So I started thinking about potential educational programs after undergrad, so graduate school. I have attorneys in my family, so my natural inclination was to go to law school. But that being said, I had very little experience other than, secondhand accounts from family and friends.
Sure.
But ultimately what I told myself was, worst case scenario, if I go to law school and just graduate with a JD degree, that really can't hurt me. I think having a degree from law school can be relatively versatile as far as graduate programs go. Mm-hmm. You have people who are agents or they work in investment companies or banks or lead companies, and there's a slew of other things you can do besides just become an attorney. Obviously, being an attorney or a lawyer is the primary motivation for people to go into law school. But what ultimately solidified my decision was that even if I went to law school and decided I didn't want to practice law, I still would have the benefit of that JD degree.
Sure. So while you were in college, how did you decide what you wanted to major in?
So if I have any regrets about undergrad, it's about deciding my major, and it's not because of necessarily what I majored in, but because I didn't put enough thought into it.
Okay.
I was a business marketing major, and I really didn't put much thought into it until probably a few weeks prior to orientation for undergrad.
Okay.
At the very least, I knew, for example, I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't want to be an engineer. So I knew I would shy away from those. And really, I just sort of defaulted to business because I figured, what's the worst that could happen? Business kind of covers everything.
Right.
And so I remember kind of thinking between management and marketing, but not really knowing the difference between either of them.
Okay.
Ultimately, I selected marketing for no particular reason at all, other than I thought it might be interesting.
Yeah.
Looking back, I know that I probably would have considered philosophy if I knew then what I knew now.
Nice.
Partially because they do say that now there's not a whole lot of majors that can prepare you for law school. Traditionally, a lot of people will be political science majors, but in terms of preparing you for law school, nothing really does that or helps much in any way.
Okay.
So I feel the benefit of choosing the marketing major was that it gave me a decent GPA so that I could get into, relatively good law schools.
Right. Going, with that, for someone who's trying to figure out their major and they're not really sure about what they want to do you have any advice for them to, figure out what might be best for them?
So I think it's hard for people going into undergrad to seriously do this analysis, but I think the best way to do it is to look at the world around you. Obviously the goal of going to school is to eventually get a job in some sort of career, some sort of field. So I think you should look at what the market looks like. Obviously tech is very popular now, or maybe it's a business major, or maybe you're interested in medicine. Like you really should try to choose something that is up your alley in the way of a potential career.
No.
Now, I don't want to be the typical person who says, don't follow your passions unless it leads to a job, because you should obviously you should have fun. You should enjoy what you do.
Right.
So I wouldn't say pick a major because you feel it will give you a good job, but I think you should consider what type of job you might want to do.
Yeah.
And maybe cater it that way.
Okay.
But to be honest, that being said, I feel like a graduating senior going to undergrad really doesn't have much idea of what they want to be. So ultimately, I think you can expose yourself to a lot of things. I've heard some people say, you should major in what you want to do, but minor in what you love. Okay. And I think what they mean by that is, pick a major that can give you a job, but minor in something that you're passionate about that you think might not otherwise get you a job. But ultimately, based on my very limited experience, I guess, is you can sort of go in many different directions with a variety of majors.
Yeah.
There's some, traditionally they say doctors are pre-med in undergrad, but I even know some who weren't pre-med in undergrad and are now doctors. I think the best thing about undergrad is it really teaches you or exposes you to the outside world before getting into the outside world. I think it's a chance for you to learn how to think critically, interact with others, and really just prepare yourself in general for life outside of college.
Okay.
But in terms of actual advice for choosing a major, I think, just go with something you think would interest you and then see where it takes you. Your interest might change, but, just see what happens.
Okay. So after you picked your major, I know in college it's, a thing where it's like, how do you balance, fun and work? And I've been asking that on, pretty much every interview, but how was that kind of balance for you?
So I would say I was fortunate enough to have a major that was relatively relatively light in terms of workload. Like I said, I was a business marketing major. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't as intense as some other programs might be. For example, like accounting or engineering, things like that. So I was lucky enough to have a lot of free time, and I think that's why the most important experience and the most important lessons I got out of undergrad weren't even from the classroom. They were from, what I did outside of the classroom.
Yeah.
And because I had a decent amount of free time, I was able to join organizations, work with other groups, take jobs on campus. And I think that more than, like I said, anything I learned in the classroom was the most beneficial because it allowed me to sort of exercise certain skills I wouldn't otherwise have just reading a book or taking a test, things like that.
Right. No, that's actually funny that you said that. I was actually talking to one of my teachers in school today, and they were like, half the things you learn, in your high school experience is it's a fraction of what you actually learn, like as in the material, in school. It's about time management, study habits, and everything in between that prepares you for college and the rest of your life. So yeah. So after college, you went to law school. How was that transition for you?
It was interesting. So on average, people tend to wait at least 2 years in between undergrad and law school. I went straight from undergrad to law school, so I was relatively young for a law student. I distinctly remember before starting law school being very nervous because I knew that my studying habits would have to drastically improve.
Yeah.
I knew that in undergrad, I didn't have hardly any study habits at all.
Yeah.
So I knew that was going to be tough because it was going to be like anything I'd ever done before.
Right.
But I will say the plus of going straight from undergrad was the fact that I was still used to being a student.
Okay.
I think there's really something to be said for that because I had a lot of friends who took a year or 2 or 3 or 4 years off before coming back to school.
Right.
And, the joke is it's hard to go back to school after you start making money. I was used to being a student paying tuition, so I had no problem going back to school and paying more tuition. But I think having no gap in between undergrad and law school, I was already in the groove of being a student. I was used to getting up to go to class, to going home and studying and reading and going to sleep and doing it all over again.
Right.
And I think that was certainly not insignificant in getting a jump start on my law school career.
Yeah. Now, I understand you need to take something called an LSAT to get into law school. Can you explain really quick what a LSAT is and how was that for you?
So the LSAT is essentially it's the law school version of an SAT. It's the closest thing the law schools have been able to come up with in terms of testing a person's ability to be a law student. That being said, they've done countless studies showing that doing well on your LSAT does not correlate with doing well in law school, nor even does doing well in law school necessarily correlate with being a successful attorney.
No.
The LSAT consists of similar subject as the SAT. It's there's like a reading section, a comprehension section. The classic section that everybody remembers is what's called the logic games. And those are sort of the most fun. They test a person's ability to think logically and think critically. It's sort of, they're almost kind of like riddles. It paints a picture for you, and it says you have a room full of 6 individuals, and this person will only talk to this person, but never to this person, and this person has to be next to this person, but never near this person, and it really just kind of makes you process these scenarios and situations that are not only complicated, but obviously under time pressure. So it's really a test designed more than anything for your ability to analyze and think critically.
Right.
I think that's because, again, they can't test your ability to be a lawyer before you go to law school because no one's a lawyer yet. So I think it's the best they've been able to come up with in terms of gauging someone's ability to be successful in law school.
Okay. And how was that for you? How was the studying, the preparation? How was that whole experience?
So what I did, and what I would recommend to anyone else considering it, is before doing anything else, just take a practice LSAT. Granted, it's, I don't remember, like a 5 or 6 hour test, but anyone considering law school should just take the LSAT once through without any prep and see how they do. Because I know some people who without any prep do well enough to, get into law school.
Yeah.
But I think you should take it, and based on how you do, you can then, pick a class. There are countless LSAT classes available, and then you can pick one catered to your specific needs. So that would be my advice. Take one before you do anything. Based on how you do, then you can take a class going forward. But my piece of advice is to not let how you do on the LSAT discourage you.
Okay.
I actually had to take the LSAT twice. So I took it, like I said, I took it without any prep, and I took it once and got not as good a score as I wanted. But because I had done that, I knew exactly what I needed to work on. So then I took a class afterwards that focused specifically on the area I needed to work on.
Right.
And then I took the LSAT again, and I was able to get a much better score. But in addition to that, I would say after you take the LSAT, don't let that discourage you or affect your decision to go to law school, because the LSAT is unlike anything, at least in strictly speaking, you're never going to see the LSAT ever again in law school.
Okay.
Obviously, in law school, you need to think critically, you need to be able to analyze and write. But in terms of actual testing, you're never going to have a test like the LSAT ever again. So whether you do well or poorly should not, necessarily act as an indicator that you're going to be a great or horrible attorney.
Okay. So what happens if, I know you said that you didn't get that good of a score without prep, but what happens if someone, doesn't do good, I guess, multiple times? Can someone just keep taking it, or how does that work?
Yeah, you can take it essentially as many times as you want. I believe, I don't know the actual numbers, but I believe when you take the test, the score lasts for something like 3 years.
Okay.
But I know people who took it, even 3 times. It's offered, I forget how many times it's offered. You can't just take it whenever you want. It's offered a specific amount of times per year. I don't remember what that is. So assuming someone is already interested in law school, they should take it as soon as possible, even sophomore year maybe.
Yeah.
I took it the first time the summer before my senior year, I believe. The beginning of my summer before senior year. And starting my senior year was when I applied for law schools. So what I actually did, I was able to, on my law school application, essentially say, hey, here's my first LSAT score, but I'm going to be taking it again. Yeah. So it's tight, and I'll forward it to you once you get it. But it was pretty nice because I was still able to apply on sort of the earlier application process.
Nice.
Because I'd taken it once before. But you can take it multiple times. In the past, I believe they said you kind of got dinged the more times you took it, so it would reflect negatively on you.
Right.
I believe they've since changed that to where they just take your best score, no questions asked, that's it. And the schools don't view your lower scores, but I'm not sure if that is still the case.
Okay. So after law school, you joined, the workforce, I guess you could say. So can you describe a typical day at work for you?
Yeah. So I'm a bit of a morning person. So I typically wake up at 6 a.m. And I have about a 25, 30-minute commute. And I try to be in the office by about 7:15 a.m. Most people I work with don't show up till about 9 a.m., which is one of the great parts about my job. It's not a strictly clock in at 9, clock out at 5 kind of deal. It's really just as long as you're getting the work done.
Yeah.
People don't care when you show up.
Yeah.
Now that being said, people still, show up around 9 and they stay till, at least 5 or 6 each day, but there is a great deal of flexibility. So I show up to work. I already have work I need to be finishing so I can get started on work. I can, come and go as I please. I'll take lunch breaks. But typically I like to get in the office around 7:15 and leave. Unless I'm really busy, I'll leave by about 6:30. Mm-hmm. But again, the great part is, and with modern technology, I can bring my laptop home from work. I can set it up at my home office. I can do work from home. If I have to work on the weekends, which is rarely, I can do that. But there is a great deal of flexibility with my work, which I really appreciate. And that's been something that's allowed me to sort of go with the flow. If I have, other things planned or plans change, I can adjust my schedule accordingly.
Right. Nice. So what would you say is the most rewarding aspect to your job? And on the contrary, what do you find is the most challenging?
So I'd say my answer is kind of the same for both. So what I love and both hate about my job is that it can be very difficult. So especially when I first got started, notwithstanding the fact that I went to law school for 3 years, there's really nothing that can prepare you for being an attorney in the real world.
Right.
So the toughest part was really that. It was one of the first times. It was really my first career. So for the first time in my life, I was sort of starting from scratch, had no idea what I was doing, and every day was something new, which, to go to your other point, was my favorite part. Is I was constantly learning, constantly doing new things, which I love, because I know that I want to be in a career, in a field where I can constantly be improving myself and my skill set.
Right.
I love being challenged intellectually. I love learning new things and applying what I learned to my career. So I'd say the hardest part and most rewarding part about my job is how challenging it is.
Okay.
I'd say, so I've now been with my current firm for about 2.5 years, and looking back, the amount of knowledge I've gained and experiences I've had has been incredible.
Yeah.
And it's great to look back and see how much I've learned, but looking forward, it's also great to see how much there still is to learn.
Right.
So I don't necessarily see that plateauing at all in the near future.
Right.
Which is nice, because I know I can go to work and each day I can then get a little bit better at what I do.
Right.
And that's, so I'd say from a technical standpoint, that's what I love about my job. But practically speaking, my favorite part about being an attorney is helping others. It's a service industry. We have clients, we have people who pay us for our opinions. And so, especially now that I have enough experience, being able to get on the phone or through email and communicate with a client who's, not an attorney, just a layperson, and be able to explain to them, how a document works, or what my opinion is on a certain provision of a lease, or how to draft a provision in a contract, or how they think they should deal with a particular issue they're having. It's very humbling at first, but also very empowering to know that there are people who rely on you for, not just your work product, but your advice and your counsel. And that's something that I think is not to be taken lightly. And it's something that's it's very satisfying to give to people on a daily basis.
Right. Yeah, no, that's awesome. What you said about, constantly learning, there's alongside, like what a teacher said in my school, if you learn something once a day and you expand your mind, knowledge is power, essentially. The more you know, the more you get to do. So that's awesome that, your job allows you to, constantly expand your mind, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
But what does it take to be a good attorney in your expertise?
So I think it changes. When you first start out on your career as an attorney, it's all about learning. Like I said before, you're not going to know anything on day one. So really, it's all about absorbing as much as possible. And for that reason, and in general, one of the most important skills is attention to detail. In a field where a comma can literally, cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, it's important to do things correctly. So and in my field in particular, it's attention to detail with respect to language and words and grammar. Every word you use, every phrase you put down on paper, and the way you phrase it can mean a variety of things. So it's important to pay attention to what you're doing, not just substantively, but also in terms of spell check or looking for errors, or
right.
Making sure that every I is dotted and T is crossed, because not only are clients paying you for advice, they're paying you to give you a good product.
Right.
It's not the case where you can skate by on just good enough. Sometimes right. you have to do your best, and you have to be sure that what you're doing is your best. So certainly getting started, I would say attention to detail is the most important thing. But as you grow and you get more experience and responsibilities as an attorney, I'd say another important skill is being able to negotiate. Sort of at the heart of particularly what I do, transactional work, is negotiation. It's one side, one person on either side. And the great part about what I do is typically at the end of the day, everybody wants the same thing. We want to get the lease signed, or we want the property to be sold. So with that in mind, it's good knowing that we're working towards a common goal.
Right.
But that being said, both sides are going to want things that the other side doesn't necessarily want. So it's not enough to know how to draft the perfect contract. You have to know how to give and when to give to the other side. So if the other side wants something, you have to know when the right time is to just say, okay, you win, you get this, and I get that.
Right.
Negotiating isn't just a good verbal skill. It's also, you need to have the right amount of experience. You need to have the knowledge of how the law works. You need to be able to know when the law is on your side, or when you can afford to give in one area of the contract but not in another.
Yeah.
Or you simply just know what a good middle ground is. So I think that becomes more and more important the more senior you become as an attorney.
Yeah.
That's the latest part of my career that I'm starting to enjoy and appreciate more as I go forward.
Nice. So what is a reasonable salary range for someone just starting as an attorney?
So definitely it varies widely, actually. I would say an important distinction is to decide if you're in the public or the private sector. So public being, government jobs. Obviously, classically, government jobs are not as highly paid as in the private sector. And those, I couldn't quote you good numbers, but generally those are typically lower than what you might otherwise get in a private sector job. And even in the private sector, you have the legal field sort of breaks it down into what they would consider quote unquote big law firms,
yeah.
quote unquote medium-sized law firms, and quote unquote little or small law firms.
Yeah.
I'd say in terms of the upper limit, and this is interesting because you can actually check this. The big law firms, the biggest firms, around the globe, they actually all match each other in terms of salary because they're all competing to get the same talent. Whenever it was decades ago, they basically all just decided, all right, we're going to pay the same. So they sort of match each other lockstep.
Yeah.
And at that high level, they recently increased it. So a first-year associate at a big law firm is making anywhere from $180,000 to $200,000 a year, which doesn't include bonus. So it's potentially even more money. That being said, those firms also tend to have a higher, what we call billable hour requirement. And what that is the amount of hours an associate is expected to bill in a given year. Yeah. So not just hours that they're expected to work, it's hours that they're expected to actually bill to a client. In other words, it's hours that's generating revenue for the firm.
Right.
So that's sort of on the upper end. Sort of on the middle tier, I'd say a first-year associate could expect to make anywhere from $140,000 to $170,000, $180,000.
Nice.
And then on the lower end, it can vary because you have smaller firms, you have sole practitioners who are just single attorneys, and on the lower end, it can vary.
Right.
There certainly is potential for a lot of high-paying salaries in the legal field.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give a young student who's aspiring to be an attorney?
An undergraduate student or a...
Yeah.
Well, I would say, get started on the LSAT sooner rather than later. Unfortunately, it's really one of the biggest factors in going to a good law school. Obviously, you have your grades and otherwise, but the LSAT is pretty important. So I would say, take an LSAT test, see where you fall in the range of scores, and if you're happy with it, great. If not, take a class. You can always do better. So I would say do that for sure. And beyond that, if I could do things over again before going to law school, it worked out well for me. I've been fortunate, but most people would start in some sort of law-related field. So there are people I went to law school with who were paralegals or who did administrative work in a law firm. So they really exposed themselves to the legal field first, and that allowed them to realize that it was a potential career that they want to pursue.
Okay.
So I think that would be my biggest advice: is work on the LSAT. Obviously, work on your grades as well, because your grades are very important.
Yeah.
But beyond that, just try to expose yourself to the legal field. Unfortunately, it's very different from what you see on TV. It's not all fun and games or all Law and Order SVU.
Yeah.
But I think it is important to really get out there and see if it's something you could enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And then just, try your best, get a good GPA and get a good LSAT score. Those are the two biggest factors. So I'd say those are the two biggest steps on your way to law school. Average individual, is going to change their career like 5 to 7 times in their lifetime. So I think you're in no rush, especially in high school.
Yeah.
I think the goal should be, again, if you're able to, would be to work as hard as you can to get into the best school you can.
Yeah.
And then see where that takes you, and then just expose yourself to the world. Take on jobs, hold leadership roles, volunteer, and just see what piques your interest.
Yeah. Well, Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to be interviewed by me today. I'm sure everything that you've said will help all the viewers, understand what you do, and hopefully it would inspire them to maybe go into the field of attorney. So, thank you so much.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure, Alexander.
Again, my name is Alexander Lluch, and this has been Careers Explained. Please be sure to check out other videos to check out if there's any other careers that you might be interested in. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.